We've got some very boring HTML here. Let's add just a little bit of very boring JavaScript. So we could put some actual JavaScript inside a script tag here, but we're going to create a separate file for it. So in your Explorer over here, add a new file to person stats called index.js. And that's where we're going to put some scripts. So inside index.html, we need to be sure to have a link to that script. So at the very end of your body, but inside the body, add a script tag. And on this one, we're going to say source equals, and then the path to that, so index.js. Now we learned about opening tag, closing tag, the whole thing's an element. What is something like source here called? Anybody know what's that? In some things it's called a property. Attribute is the HTML term for it, but yeah, same idea. In the DOM, that would be translated to a property. Yeah. src equals, and this is the attribute value, index.js. So I want to make sure at this point, I could just write like 20 lines of JavaScript and then be frustrated when it doesn't work. Or I could double check right now that this much is at least hooked up right. So I'm going to do that. So over here in my index.js, I'm going to write console.log. It worked. So console log logs something to a console, which is in our developer tools. The developer tools are your best friend. To open them in your browser, on a Mac, Option Command J. On Windows, that would be Shift Control J. Shift Control J or Alt Command J on a Mac. And that'll open up your console, where you can just type some JavaScript commands too if you want. But right now, we want to see if this works. So let's refresh the page. Oh yeah, I moved this to a different folder while you weren't looking. It worked! Yay, we did it. Our JavaScript is hooked up right. But it's not doing anything interesting.
So wait, what? Mine's not showing up there. I don't know.
Do you see the console, but you don't have that message?
Yeah, I don't have
Did you refresh the page?
Yes, I saved it in Visual Studios and then refreshed it.
Okay. So I have a plugin installed that makes it super easy. You can also, well, you can do a couple things. Is Safari your default or Chrome? Okay, so instead what you could do, you could say open space dot, and that'll open up the folder. And then you could right-click on index.html and say open with Chrome. That might be the easiest way. So console log is kind of handy for just logging a message to see what something is at any given point. We'll use it a lot, and we'll learn some more console tricks tomorrow. But for right now, let's do something a little more interesting. Let's give ourselves a button. Why not? Button, and inside we'll say again, click me. And then we want something to happen when we click that button. What if, instead of alerting, we want it to change the text of that H1? Ooh, fancy. So we know to listen for anything and do something else, we're going to have to add an event listener to the button. So we need to grab the button and save it to a variable. Const btn equals document.querySelector. And we'll just pass it the string button. Easy enough. And then we know we want to add an event listener, btn.add event listener. First argument is the event we're listening for. This part, right? When what happens? When a click happens. When click happens, do what? Well, we don't have a function yet. So comment that out for now and let's make one. Let's make a function. We'll call it change heading. Why not? So if we're going to change that H1, we probably need to grab the H1, right? We can do that. How about const heading equals what? Need to grab an element from the page. Document.querySelector. What's a selector that'll match that thing? H1 seems good enough. Then what? Let's play around on our console for just a minute. I'm going to run const heading equals document.querySelector H1 in my JavaScript console and play around with it. Oh, shucks, it says undefined. Does that mean something bad happened? No. That's just the return value, and the return value of any assignment in JavaScript is undefined, not that value. So heading is still the right thing. We hope. Whew, it is. But the return value of the assignment is undefined, so don't panic when you see that. So if I hover over H1 person stats here, it actually highlights it up there. So we know it's the right thing. Cool. But what can we do with it? Well, we know we could add an event listener to it. We can add it to a button. We could add it to a heading too. What else can we do? What we want to do is change its text. Heading.text. Ooh, text content. That sounds enticing. Person stats. Yay. So text content, a property, not a function. It doesn't have parentheses at the end. Seems to get us the contents of the element. Can I change it that way too? Heading.textContent equals something else? Yeah, we can. So over here in change heading, now that we have it, let's say heading.textContent equals ye old person stats. Refresh the page. This hasn't actually run yet, right? We don't want anything to happen until this event occurs. So we need to tell it, we need to tell our event listener what to do after the click occurs. So we'll type change heading. The actual function itself, not the return value of the function, the actual function. When what happens, click. Do what? Change heading. By naming our function something nice and descriptive, it works very nicely in that sentence. Does it work? Don't forget to save. Don't forget to refresh. Click the button. Yay! We did it. It changes. Life is grand. So we made a little more happen. And it works. That might be worth celebrating in a commit. We have things in a working state, so before we break everything again, let's go ahead and save our progress. So, last time we typed get add and then the specific file we were adding. You could also say get add dot. Dot, remember, is a reference to the current directory. So that will just take all your changes. Tell Git about the changes. And now if we type commit, those are the changes that will end up in this commit. Commit basically just creates a label that points to these changes. So let's say git commit -m for message. And let's say something nice and descriptive for what we've done since the last commit. Change heading when the button is clicked. I follow the same commit message style that Google and GitHub use, which is an imperative sentence, so a command, which is nice because it sort of completes the sentence, this commit will change heading when the button is clicked. Now that we've committed, we can push it back up to GitHub. GitHub doesn't have it yet. It just lives on our machine still, even though it isn't permanently in the repository on our machine. So git push, just like that. We'll move it up to GitHub. If we type git log, we can see our commits. We see initial commit down here, and we see change heading when the button's clicked. To close this, hit Q. Let's look at GitHub to see if it's all true. One commit here, hit refresh. 2 commits, hooray. I can look there and I see my 2 commits. Beautiful.